Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for attending today's CGNA webinar. I'm Sarah Monteleone, President of CGNA, and we appreciate your participation. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we begin. Please put yourself on mute. You may consider using your full widescreen to properly view this presentation. This webinar will be recorded, sent out to membership, and included on demand on the CGNA Exchange site. If you have any questions, there's a bar to the right of your screen. Look for the questions section and type your questions there. We will get to Q&A at the end of the presentation. If there is any shared information or documentation on this webinar, that information will be placed on the right-hand side of your screen under handouts. And as you can see, there is one handout available. Now let's begin. I'd like to give TCS Building Automation Systems a warm CGNA welcome. TCS, a pioneering manufacturer in the realm of building automation systems, brings with it a wealth of expertise and innovation. Their impressive portfolio also includes cloud-based energy management software, further demonstrating their commitment to cutting-edge solutions. At the heart of their offering lies the TCS Basis line, a remarkable series of controllers tailored for diverse HVAC, lighting, and refrigeration applications commonly encountered within commercial and retail environments. With TCS on board, we are not only expanding our network, but also welcoming a trailblazer in the field. I'd like to welcome Mark Miller, Business Development Engineer, and Brian Tarbert. Thank you for being here today, and I'll let you take it from here. Thank you, gentlemen.
Great, thank you.
Awesome, thank you, Sarah.
I guess I'm going to go ahead and start out today. Again, my name is Brian Tarbert. I'm VP of Business Development with TCS. I've been here for 23 years. So I think we're going to start out by launching a couple of poll questions about your interaction over the years with TCS, how familiar you might be with us as a company, and also what are you experienced with as far as our product line is concerned. So while those poll questions are being launched and you're answering them, I'll kind of give you a little bit of background on TCS. We've been in business for 40 years. We just celebrated our 40th anniversary in January of this year. And during that time, TCS has really evolved from being originally an OEM manufacturer for Johnson Controls and Barber Coleman and companies like that, to launching our own line of HVAC controls. And whereas some people may have an impression of us as being more or less a thermostat company, that's really not accurate. TCS really does provide a full range of solutions from a control hardware standpoint for pretty much most commercial applications you're going to run into. And also we were the first cloud solution for energy management that was in our industry. We launched our Ubiquity cloud website in 2001. So we've got over 20 years experience developing our cloud solution and adding to it and adding to the capabilities of it over the years. So so I don't know if we
did you get the poll going?
Did you get the poll going or?
Didn't see it in particular.
Well,
there it is.
Oh, okay. Great. So again, kind of moving on a little bit here. So where have our markets been? And that's typically been using on a lot of end user type accounts. We do, because Ubiquity Cloud is so well situated for enterprise accounts, we do a lot of business with bank chains and retail chains, things of that nature. But it's also very well positioned as a single site interface to the EMS. So we do a lot of schools, a lot of retail outlets. So we do a fair number of restaurants and office buildings, things of that nature. Churches, we do a ton of churches. So
there's some big churches.
There's some really big churches out there, especially down south, boy. So that really kind of kind of helped us develop our solutions over the years to not only market toward that larger multi-site market, but also to those individual users as well. And initially in the 90s and early 2000s, we even came out with Ubiquity. We struggled a bit finding wholesalers that were really embracing our solutions, and so we ended up having to go to market in a lot of areas where we couldn't get good wholesaler representation directly to end users, directly to contractors. And one of the big reasons we've joined CGNA now is that this will give us the opportunity to get work with wholesalers on a national level with all of the different members that you have, and really get us to that point where we're channeling as much or most of our business as possible through the CGNA membership.
So really, you guys know those customers in that marketplace.
Right.
For those of us that are in Middleton, Wisconsin, right outside of Madison, it's just not fair to be able to serve a contractor really effectively. And so really, my years of it in the building automation industry, there wasn't an avenue such as distributors like you guys through CGNA. And so in the development of having that, making that available through the power that you guys provide, gives a greater avenue. And that's not something that TCS had available in the past.
That's true.
So learning about that seemed like an ideal approach to be able to serve those customers that are looking for a method of controlling their energy. And so I want to focus with you guys and help you guys expand your business with a different kind of solution that TCS offers.
Right. And as I said, we've got quite a number of hardware solutions. There's most HVAC commercial applications we're able to cover with our control solutions, not just packaged equipment, but the boilers, the chillers, the air handler units, the VAV jobs, zoning jobs, water loop systems. We've got control systems for all of those, and the software within Ubiquity to manage those as well. So I guess we're going to kind of pivot here to Mark, and Mark's going to go over a little bit about our general product line, how things are set up in our website, and then we'll come back to me at a later point, and I'll try to show you an example of Ubiquity and how that works.
So you guys know all in the past that everybody handed out catalogs, and that was what the sales guys did, is go update the catalogs. Well, we know that's not taking place anymore. So we did that as well. We had a catalog. Everything we moved to the website now, which you guys, you're going to find all the information that's readily available. We don't really hide anything. We make it available. So as Brian had talked about, the reason why we asked that question where you're familiar with us is due to the fact that many people have heard of us. Like, I've heard of you guys. I saw those in a location. We were in a site. And so I remember those one way or the other, but I just don't know anything about them. And so that's why we asked that question, because many people have dealt with us one way or the other. So in our website, we talk about our energy management simplified, and that's the intention of going about it. The simplification comes into it is that it's not a specialty training. What essentially is, it's a configurable controller. These configurable controllers connect together, make a building automation system. So therefore, users that have medium-sized buildings and are just looking for some avenue that they can't invest $3.50 per square foot in building automation systems can achieve with TCS at a fraction of a cost. The other side of it is really valuable is that you can have your local service agency. Just the reason why we talk about churches, because quite often a service group that's a member of the church says, we need to get some energy management because you've grown so much. I can do this for you. I don't have to hire an outside firm. And so therefore making available to get that. So we're energy simplified management overall. And so this gets a little bit further. You're going to see some icons of companies out there. We service quite a few accounts, different types of accounts. We talked about financial institutions. One of the greatest strengths to that is the financial institutions challenge us for the IT component. They demand such a high level of security that it drives our focus on the level of security throughout all of our users themselves. And so therefore quite a few financial institutions, some of which may have multiple entities of automation in their buildings, will end up using us for a portion of it. So we do a lot with that. So you'll see these retail places that have them. So in those cases, they have locations all across the country. If you're familiar with retail, they're constantly renovating. They're always changing, making some changes. And so that's the service work that we do with them overall is keep up to date on those systems and keep them going with them. So there's quite a few of those. We kind of break it down a little bit into different organizations. Had some guidance in regards to clarifying what is the markets. And we talk about financial, retail, hospitality components where you end up having different locations, education, everything from high schools. Oftentimes high schools are frustrated with their automation system and looking for an avenue that their service contractor can provide. And so we've served that really well and really excited many users from that perspective overall. So our website tells a lot of that story. If we go into our energy management cloud basis and see a little bit more about what it's about. So we do talk about it as Ubiquity Cloud. That's not always easy for people, but to pronounce Ubiquity. But essentially what Ubiquity Cloud is it's a completely separate server from what's in the building, separate server from anywhere else. And essentially users are accessing the information of their building through this cloud-based service. And so essentially, they contact that from their device, whether it's their computer, their laptop, tablet, or cell phone, they contact that. So their contact is not to the building itself. What we essentially do is a polling approach where the buildings themselves send their information up into Ubiquity Cloud. And so Ubiquity Cloud then has that information, and essentially what ends up occurring is as people access that cloud, they get their building information. One of the strengths to this is we communicate every minute. So that information is very current. And so that brings all of that information to the cloud so that user gets access to everything in the building as current as a minute. And so therefore, it's very powerful information, a very current information that's available in the cloud. And so the literature piece that shown in this download sheet is essentially the same piece that's available in your management panel, and in there that's a literature piece. So you can download it from the website or it can be available from there. Part of the strength of Ubiquity's and the controls that we bring into it is that make it scalable. So you can add a controller pretty easy. The strength to it is that when you add a controller to the network, it automatically discovers it, recognizes it's there, and is ready to operate. From there, you can clean up a little bit, give it a different name, make some unique information about it to identify the location and such, but it's already connected. So therefore, there isn't a lot of complexity to getting it to add to it. So that allows you to add controllers, make some changes on that, and bring it right into the system itself. Taking it a little bit further, because not only do we have this cloud services, what we do is we have the hardware. So here in Middleton, Wisconsin, right outside of Madison, we manufacture everything right here. And so that manufactures the software. So we have our design engineers that design it, support all the IT entity of that, which is our servers themselves, and to do all of that component. But on top of it, what we do is we develop and maintain hardware. And so what you're seeing here in our BACnet controllers is we evolve all of the controllers into a Ubiquistat. And the Ubiquistat combined all of the sequences that our customers asked for. We developed the controls for, and we put them all into 4 different essential models that sequence those operations. And so we could share a little bit more about that. We'll get into a little bit more about the parts and pieces. But instead of getting in great depth, that's something that we can carry forward as your interest grows into that. But the other component that oftentimes people don't entirely realize is that just because we have this energy management, we also have a full family of controls to complete, just like Brian said, is the entire commercial applications. And so here's our architecture. You know, you guys are familiar with building automation systems. You end up having all these different architectures. You know, okay, this network's up here, you connect to this network, you got a box in between, it converts. We don't make that complicated. We have one box in the building. That one box connects to all of the hardware, and that can be a daisy chain. It can be a different configurations of an RS-485 communication. It brings it all together, and that dotted line that goes into Ubiquity Cloud sends that out to the cloud, most likely through an Ethernet connection. We do have customers that want to go in a cell just because they want to isolate it entirely from any other network, and to bring all of that information together. So As it was introduced by Sarah, we certainly do the room controllers, but we also have system controllers, and that includes such things as an air handling unit for a VAV application, or air handling unit for makeup air application. We do other things for a chiller and a boiler controller. So that'll be staging the boilers and brings in your hot water temperature supply and return. Does the pumping controls and alternating it. Same thing with the chillers. On top of it, lighting. A lot of our customers said, well, if you're doing all of the scheduling for HVAC, well, you should do the lighting. So we've incorporated all of that from a 5 to a 8-stage lighting controllers. On top of that, electric metering, because that's what the whole key of managing your energy. So you bring that information into it. On top of it, people like critical temperatures. So in monitoring capabilities of high temperature, low temperatures. So we've incorporated monitoring for refrigeration, so you can keep track of that critical component of that equipment. So those are all the controls overall that we bring together. If you go into our product list, what you'll end up getting access to a whole list of our catalog, our online catalog. And so as you're going to look into this, you're seeing the Ubiquity on our right. As you start looking into just our HVAC controllers, what you end up seeing is our HVAC controllers from our building management. We refer to them as our QD devices. We have sensors that incorporate into that, because as we've done enterprise business, they want us to bring that whole package together. And on top of it, air handling unit controllers, which you see on the left. Here's a chiller controller, a boiler controller. We incorporate loop controllers, so as you end up having a geothermal system or a water source heat pump system, you have a primary condenser loop, which will end up heating and cooling that loop in order to maintain those heat pumps. Then we have general purpose controllers, but these are all configurable controllers, so it can be activated by starting and stopping them directly, simply address and power onto them. And alternate to that, we do have a free software insight that you can configure those controllers before you even get them powered up.
Also a VAV controller, which wasn't on that page, but it's
you missed that on the page.
Right.
As we scroll back up on the page, you'll end up seeing our VFD control sequences. And so that includes not only the VAV boxes and the air handling unit, but also a pressure sensor. We got a really nice pressure sensor that can monitor duct pressure as well as low pressure differential for building static overall. So we got the full breadth of controls overall to be able to do that. So you can select these into the individual radio buttons to pick the different controllers. You can see our controllers as well. And our thermostats, we still maintain and keep our legacy controllers as well, which are all of the old-fashioned T7300 Honeywell stat type of things. That was the initiative that our owner was looking at, is like, why could those Honeywell T7300 thermostats not connect up and give you the ability to see the entire building overall? And so that's what we really created, is brought all of that together. Other things within our products and services, that just gets into a platform overall and be able to see all the parts and pieces that what brings it in. So our website tells a pretty good story of what we do. I think the other thing I was going to look at doing is going into at least our Ubiquity a little bit further. So what we essentially do in Ubiquity is we have 4 different sequence of operations off of that. Our full featured version of that has analog outputs for cooling and heating analog outputs, but on top of it, an economizer analog out. And that gives you the ability to take control of that economizer so that you can maintain that ventilation requirement that is often needed in the space. So on top of that, we have additional monitoring with temperatures, additional temperatures, so you can have a discharge air temperature, mixed air temperature, return air. You can bring outside air, so it can be all a standalone control in itself. And then we have sequence of operations that are essentially commercial sequence of operations. So we can do discharge air reset for cooling functions, for heating functions. We can do ventilation override, so demand control ventilation. So those are the sequences on the full feature. We do step down from that, where you end up just simplifying your analog output. We just do the economizer functions, so simplify those analogs. We go down to a version of just a simple 2-stage. So oftentimes you're just going to start and stop that unit. And then we get down to our 10 series, which is a a zone controller, which has 2 modulations for a ventilation side or damper side, and a heat reheat capabilities. And on top of that, what you can do is use it as a terminal control, like the old-fashioned VDT controller or the carrier or the train tracker type of application overall. So our literature on our website itself will end up having product literature, so you can see more information about these applications. You can find out all the functions that are available, more information about these series that I've just introduced to you about how they can step through it. The powerful thing about it is a touchscreen dynamic display, and in that touchscreen you can get access to all the functions that are necessary within that control. So what we did is, because it's a BACnet device, is that touchscreen gets into the entire BACnet Explorer browser access. So you don't need another device in order to configure that controller. So really powerful controller. We do help quite a few individuals just about how to operate the controller and bring it into their application and bring it together and put it together. So we do have our entire BACnet Explorer, all the BACnet integration devices, and so we have all of the clarity of where you can get all these access points and what these profiles in the BACnet site are as well. So it's all available from our website, so I encourage you to take a look at that overall. Would you like to go into Ubiquity a little bit further?
Yeah. I guess first, can we go back to those poll questions and see what people answered? I'm curious to know that.
Did you see some of those results? So
no,
I think people had.
Let me share those again. So the first poll, which is when was the last time you used TCS products? So the results were 20% within the last 5 years and 80% never. And
either often or never. Okay.
And the second one, which product line? For that one, we have the Ubiquity Stats and/or Ubiquity Cloud Software is 25%, VAV and Zone Controls 25%, and 75% is none.
Okay. All right. So this is a good learning opportunity for everybody to learn our control. Could you, before I go into Ubiquity, could you bring that the Ubiquity architecture diagram up again?
Certainly.
That would be great, because there's something I wanted to address there real quickly. So looking at that diagram there, as you can see, that Ubiquity Cloud is at the top. So each one of these QD devices, or these gateways, as Mark said, they really serve a number of different functions. One is to pull the network every minute, but it's also to contact the Ubiquity Cloud every minute, because you as a user, you're not penetrating down into that device to talk to it. You're talking to a digital twin, if you will, of the site that exists in the Ubiquity Cloud. So any changes that you make are being made in the cloud. And that's why we're so secure. One of the reasons we work with so many financial institutions is because we don't have to have a VPN tunnel back into the site to be able to make changes to the site. That QD device talks once a minute, so that gives you that really rich, deep data that you can have with Ubiquity, whereas a lot of our competitors, you get a trended point once every 15 minutes. We get you a trended point once every minute. But also, we also communicate once a minute, because we want to make sure that those changes are being brought down into as close to real time as we can. So Ubiquity, it contacts Ubiquity Cloud, gives the trended data from the previous minute, says, oh, I've got a new set point, I've got a new schedule. It grabs that, closes the connection to the cloud, and then it writes it down to the controller. So it's a really powerful way to be able to do the system and be very, very secure from that standpoint. So let's go ahead and go to Ubiquity. So when you're logging into Ubiquity, you're basically going to a website and you're putting in your username and password. Your admin for that is then going to give you access to whatever sites and whatever level of access that you're allowed to have. That's what you're going to see every time you log in. So right now we're just looking at an enterprise that's why am I not scrolling? Oh, I see. It's the other way. Okay. It just scrolls a little different. Pardon me. So what we're seeing here is a enterprise that is just TCS controlled. So if you saw, there's a board behind us. it's it's one of the test boards that we do, or one of the training boards that we set up, and we use these as for training purposes internally. We use them when we do on-site training or our training here that we do twice a year at TCS. But we also provide these as sandboxes for users like you that you can go in, get access to, and play around and really learn the controls on how the system works. So the enterprise homepage that you're saying, it's divided up into two main sections. The top section, this enterprise summary, basically gives you a number of different dashboards that you can look at, which shows you some basic performance data, which looks at run times. You can import utility data if you so choose. The service tab gives you a view of all the service tickets that our tech support has done. One of the things we didn't mention, yes, we not only design our controls, we build them here, but we also have our own tech support system right here in the building. So it's a very centralized approach that you don't see a lot anymore. And
that tech support is not an additional paid service. It's part of what
correct.
What the Ubiquity provides to them. So people will call us with an individual thermostat or be called in as part of a service agency for a large enterprise.
Yeah, we try to, Ubiquity is a subscription service, and for that subscription, you basically get everything, not just tech support, but you get all the access to your sites. All the data is stored, it's yours, we store it for you. Unlimited users, unlimited number of points that you can have on a site, and we do all the device management. So that QD device, which is basically a server device, as you guys may know, those are constantly in need of updates for the operating system or security patches or whatever. But because they're connected to Ubiquity, we update that for our customers. So we don't nickel and dime you to death with different licensing and everything else that we do. We just update that for you behind the scenes. You and your clients won't even know it. So as I said, we've got these different dashboards, and then right down here is the My Site section. That's where probably most people spend time, because this is where you can access the different sites. Now, one of the things about Ubiquity, our controllers are very simple to use, but Ubiquity, we tried to make it as plug and play as we could. Again, we got over 20 years of development on this, so we've made a lot of advances over the years. But when a site first comes online, that QD is set up for that enterprise, and Ubiquity knows what enterprise it belongs to. It knows what state it's in, automatically puts it access to that site right on the enterprise homepage, and builds all of this information for you. So from here you can see, whether they're online, offline, whether they've got alarms, how many stages of cooling or heating are running, what percentage of the controls are in the occupied mode, how many channels of lighting are active, and what's the average temperature. Now, again, none of these sites have any equipment that's actually hooked up to anything. They're just, like I said, sandboxes. So you're going to see a lot of data that doesn't maybe make sense, but it's really there to play around with. But when you open this up, you're going to get some additional data. For example, basically the address of this. We do a weather feed. So Ubiquity knows the closest weather feed to this particular location, and it will start sending that weather feed data. Quick reports just give you some basic information that if you want to provide, that you can look at without having to drill into the site. The alarms are visible here, so you can actually look at the alarms. You can archive them as well. The performance gives you basic run times, utility again, and who's got access to the site. But for the most part, people are going to want to be able to log into the site. So you can just do that by clicking the online button. And again, that takes you then to the site homepage. Again, this is all built by Ubiquity automatically. So when the site comes online, Ubiquity automatically populates all of this information, with the exception of if you want to upload photos, for example, of the building, or if you want to upload site images or parts, site plans, you can do that as well. If you've got MEPs that you want to upload, if you've got controls drawings you want to put there for reference, you can do that as well. The quick report is again available here too, and you can add different points if you want to be able to quickly look at the humidity level or the CO2 levels. You can add that to the quick report. And then Another thing that's not automatically built by Ubiquity is this graphical interface, but that's a real simple thing to do. You basically upload your images, and then you just go to the edit button, and you can take a controller and position it right exactly where it needs to be on the drawing. And I save that, and then you can see it's just been added to the drawing here. So it's a great, easy way to make a graphical interface. But I would say the vast majority of our customers really utilize what's automatically done with Ubiquity. And again, Ubiquity knows what controllers it's discovering. It automatically discovers the controllers. It automatically puts them in a category on the home page. It automatically gives it a monitoring page, a programming page, and it starts trending all of the data for you. So you don't have to set up any trend files or anything in that nature. Ubiquity does all that work behind the scenes. You can see here that the controls, the images are available for you here. Now, when I scroll over this, you'll notice that there's a pop-up which gives you additional monitoring information on the controller. And again, these are updated once a minute, so you get pretty close to real-time data on here. We also have this new graphing feature that we just updated recently, and this will give you all of the graphing data for the last 7 days. You can turn things on and off here, and look at the data as you need to. You can also zoom in, that type of thing.
So really the square boxes are the set points. So the set points as they go from unoccupied and occupied. What I think is cool about this as well, you can see how it tapered into a morning warm up as we end up having our smart recovery.
Yeah,
that's true.
So and again, when I zoom in, I can also reset that and reset it back to the 7 days here. And we have another graphing tool that you can really drill into this even at a deeper level than here. But this is a really great way to get some information without having to leave this page. And again, this was just put into Ubiquity, didn't cost anybody anything. They didn't have to download anything. It's just included with the Ubiquity interface. And if I want to drill into the controller, all I've got to do is click on it. That's going to open up this monitoring view on the controllers tab. And all the monitored points then are available here. I can look at the last 24 hours of temperature here, do a very quick graph of that. I can see a representation of the 7-day schedule, and I can even go online and adjust the temperature. So you get that service call, they say they're too hot. You don't want to do a permanent change. You can just lower that set point down for them very easily from the interface. So the edit button gives you the ability to change the location and the name of the controller. So again, since Ubiquity auto detects everything, it just will call the controller auto detected address 88. You then just name it, give it a name and where the location of it is. And that's one of the few things that you need to do, other than do some final programming.
So essentially, the other tab was with the graphical perspective, where some users want just that graphical, they have a quick overview. But this one takes us in the text version. So those technical people like myself want to see all the details of what the unit's actually doing.
Yes.
So you get all of that built into it, and it's all just from a website browser.
Right. I want to drill now into the programming, and everything here is on a single page. So all of the information you've got on this particular controller is available to you. The 4 different schedules that it can have right here. A summary of the controller, some of the specific functions like the duration of resetting the set point as a Ubiquity user, all the controller points. So this is everything that's monitored on that controller. If you're not using a particular point and you don't want to see it on your monitoring page, you just hide that point. Ubiquity will still actually trend it, but you don't have to have the page cluttered up with things that you're not really monitoring. And then, right here, systems and set points. And you'll find that this is a really logical way that we've set these up. We've put these in, even though it's on one page, they're all in these very distinct categories, if you will. And what you'll find on Ubiquity is everything is very easy. There is no programming language to learn. You either type in a value, you select from a drop down, or you click a box. And that's all the programming language that you need to know how to do. We tried to make this, again, we have that slogan, genius is simple. The genius is built into the software to make the interface as simple as we possibly can. And this is why, contractors, mechanical contractors who maybe have never done any control work before, many times they'll start out with us because we've made this really simple, very easy for them to onboard, but still be able to take care of an awful lot of applications. So every single feature is here, right down to things like the minimum on and off times, offsets, differentials. Those can all be changed here on this page. You can then save that, or you can go into, for example, global changes. So if I want to set up a controller and then copy and paste this controller programming to another controller, let's say I've got 6 other controllers at the building that are going to be exactly the same. I can select all of those and I can copy and paste that to that site and put those all on that from that one controller.
So one thing to keep in mind is that when we're accessing this, we are into the cloud. So these changes that Brian is doing right now, they need to go from that cloud back into the building. So you need to save that. You need to submit that back to the cloud.
Right.
So the next time it reaches up, it says, hey, things are different. I need to change that in the controller.
Exactly.
So you're truly not reaching into the building itself.
Exactly. If I want to just, let's say that I've got an enterprise that wants to update their unoccupied set points, I can just choose that, and then I can go, I want to do that for every single control, every single site in Wisconsin. I click that button. It's a very time saving tool, very powerful tool, and boy, was this used a lot during COVID when people were constantly changing because the occupancy was different from day to day on a lot of these buildings. So it is the global function got used a lot, and we have the same global function not just for programming, but also you can do global scheduling, and you can program global alarms as well. So so I'll go ahead and cancel out of that. Real quick review. Now again, we're just touching on a few things here today, but scheduling, another pretty simple thing to do. I can create a new schedule by just naming it here and then filling out the schedule. Or I can take a existing schedule and modify that. So let's say that I want to do one occupied period. And again, I'm just selecting from drop downs. That's all I'm doing. 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. And there's my weekday schedule. And all I've got to do is submit that. And then it has the ability to do holidays as well. So I just pick a color from this color palette. That opens up this drop down for scheduling. I can do a date schedule. So for example, let's say that they're going to be late at night doing inventory or cleaning or something like that. I can do one, and then I can make it vanishing. So it just, after that day happens, it just disappears and it doesn't recur. I can do a roaming schedule, which would be something similar to Thanksgiving, which occurs on the 4th Thursday of November. I can do a roaming one, or what a lot of people use is the bank schedules or the national holiday schedules, where they might be closed for specific days. They can choose those days. They can keep those repeating year after year, and they can make it so that everything on that schedule, all the devices that are attached to this schedule, are all unoccupied for those days. So it's really powerful. Ubiquity will know, for example, if a national holiday lands on a Sunday, like this year New Year's Day did, it automatically knows to move it to Monday. So pretty powerful tool. But again, the programming is all the same, just typing a number or selecting from a drop down or clicking a box.
We should talk about the green bar across the top, which is really for the enterprises. And so that shows up on every one of the pages, because on an enterprise, each site is assigned with an enterprise, even if it's a single site location. And so that's what these green menus really are doing, and bringing all of that information in. So reporting capabilities, the global. So, and it's like Microsoft products, what you can get in from one area, you end up back in the same area with a different approach. So you can get into that. So the admin tab here, essentially this is the username and access information on top of the user access.
All right, if you're an enterprise admin, you set up new users, you assign them the different sites for access, the level of access that they have.
And we know that from an energy perspective, and even from an enterprises, they like the benchmarks. You know, the government's initiating that and saying, what are the benchmarks? What are you going to try to accomplish in your temperature of heating and cooling? And how are you doing with regards to that? And so Ubiquity brings all of that together. So you don't have to build the reports. The reports are built into it automatically.
Correct.
As its controllers come into the play. And so you can add into that that aspect of it.
Right. We also have different control and energy policies, so that if you've got, for example, a KW meter, you can set it up to do, demand control. So you get up to a certain KW, then you can instruct the system to shift set points, turn off lighting channels, disable second stages, that type of thing to keep that demand down.
And all of that would reside within the building itself.
Right.
So therefore, it doesn't have to go to the cloud in the event that there isn't any connection. It doesn't mean the electrical information is not going to shave off that other load. It'll continue to do that,
Right,
because it has that saved into the controller group.
And then when we have more complex systems, that goes beyond, unitary equipment that we could just control individually. We have this subsystem page, so we can establish loop systems, VAV systems, our superzone system, for example, where you can add a subsystem, and then you can choose, what am I going to be using for my master controller? What are going to be my zone controllers? Am I going to set up voting, for example? How many minimum controls need to vote to enable it? What are going to be my my controllers that I'm going to assign to the system? What are my zone controllers that I'm going to assign? So all of that is just set up here. Again, pretty simple way to do this. If you don't use it all the time, that's one of the reasons we have tech support. Tech support can get online with this site and walk you right through it, or walk your customer right through it as well, if need be. So. But it's a real simple way to do a lot of these more complex systems.
With lots of capabilities. On top of it, we know BACnet is growing incredibly, and so therefore the individual devices have BACnet integrated with them. And so one of the advantages of that is that we can bring in, with the QD that does BACnet integration, you can bring that in and it'll bring that same information in. In the process of doing that, you do a lot more of the BACnet component, the discovery process. Make sure you bring all of the information from the unit. And from there, what we do is we map it for the information that you want to see within Ubiquity. When you bring that mapped information in, you get access just like this. The dashboard looks the same. These components look the same. Then on top of it, what you can do is you can get all that trended information as well. So you'll get trended details of that. So if we put a thermostat on the top of a rooftop unit, we're going to get the discharge air, we'll get the space temperature, we'll be able to see when the fan starts and stops. That's about it. We BACnet into that rooftop unit, then we'll get everything into it. So we'll be able to see the pressures that the refrigeration circuit's running. We'll find the automated alarms that the unit will initiate from a BACnet perspective. We'll be able to see all of the different stages of the condenser fans, if that happens to be available. So all of the information is brought into it, and oftentimes they bring even more into it with a ventilation override and other
and advantage of having, we've got, as Mark said, we've got our proprietary protocol, our TCS bus, which we developed back in the 90s and continue to expand upon. And then we've got BACnet for things that get a little more complicated, where you need that additional information. But for a very simple building with unitary equipment, for example, you may not need the BACnet. You may just be able to go with the TCS bus, very, very plug and play.
Lots of existing applications are looking for the ability to know what's taking place, and you can do quite a bit. And a lot of our enterprise customers just appreciate to be able to do diagnostics such as, is this unit blowing cold air or is it blowing warm air? Is the fan actually operating or not? So getting some of the straightforward diagnostics minimizes the truck time for sending a truck to it. Adapting before the conditions are out of range where the customers are complaining about it. So the power of really connecting your building together from a straightforward user application overall.
Mhm.
So I haven't seen any questions come through, so I haven't necessarily jumped into those in particular. So if anything comes through, Herschel is certainly willing to take those on overall. What additional information? We covered a lot of with the controls and the BACnet devices and the Ubiquity itself.
Mhm.
What other?
Yeah, I guess let's just stop here, see if anybody's got any questions to throw to us first. So I think we got about 10 minutes left or so.
I've actually got a text with a couple questions. This is Sarah with CGNA. So first, Brian and Mark, thank you for being so transparent about your business. Appreciate you sharing your end users and customers. But really what I heard is your focused path through distribution, specifically CGNA distributors. So thank you for that transparency. The question that I got, and I'm actually encouraged because it tells me our CGNA distributors are thinking about their approach to their contractor customers. The question is, what are the primary reasons why customers use TCS solutions? So if you could answer that, distributors, maybe get your pencils out and let's take some notes, but this will be a good guide to how we approach our customers with this solution and your product.
That's a good question.
Turn the camera.
Oh, yeah. If I'll start that if you don't mind, Mark. So from an end user standpoint, I can tell you, a story, a good story when we started doing business with a very large bank chain. Not only was he concerned to do business with a company that provided him excellent service, and I think that is probably one of the biggest reasons why people work with us. Once they experience the level of service that they get from TCS and the technical support, it's really second to none. But what he said is he wanted a solution that could take care of his very small bank chains that have a couple of thermostats and maybe a little bit of lighting controller, all the way up to his admin buildings. And because we're a full controls solution, we could do all of that for him. And I think from a contractor standpoint, I think it's the ease of entry is the biggest thing that we get from them is that I've dabbled in controls. I really wanted to do controls. I don't want to continue to sub them out to an expensive contractor. I want to do this stuff myself. And this is a very easy way to be able to get into that end of the business for a lot of the mechanical contractors who have never really done that kind of work before.
We've got some handful of contractors that are remote. They're not in a big city.
Mm-hmm.
And so therefore they have a passionate group of customers that know them, like them, and we're going to have them service all of their buildings. And the challenge got to be is the big companies that are in the big cities are saying, we can't really afford to bring everybody out there. So these local contractors said, we're going to do it all for them. And they need the ability to do building automation systems. So they embraced with us and their staff could learn it. They could design it, could lay it out and support it entirely. And so therefore they carry that forward. So we find that we have very loyal remote contractors. The challenge gets to be is that we don't find those in the big cities. And so that's where you as distributors know of these customers, know of these service agencies that utilizing could put a system in place.
Right, and we also want to take some of these contractors and move them over to distribution as well. So there's some business that we want to shift from supporting directly to supporting through distribution.
It makes it easier because their accounts are already set up with you guys. They're
local.
They're
financial.
They're going to buy their other components that aren't necessarily going to get just the building automation system components of it. So it really helps out. And there's some aspects of questions that we as a manufacturer don't entirely able to support. So a contractor's finishing up his school and they're trying to get all these little parts and pieces together. That's not what we do. And so you as a distributor can help them out, finish that other aspect of it. As we got into COVID, one of the components that a lot of you guys probably experience is supply chain issues. And since we are building our own controllers and essentially just putting all these small little components, building together, make our own circuit boards, build all of the controllers, we can do that without any delays. And so we did not have any issues or delays. We had lots of people asking for cross references and trying to switch over to those other products that they couldn't get. So our first question that our sales staff has asked when somebody says, when can I get that? Well, can you get the order in by 2 o'clock today? Because we can get it out today. And so most of the cases, it's that case. So occasionally we get some large run of orders. In those cases, we schedule them according to when they're going to need to be delivered and such. But so we had a lot of requests at that through COVID timeframe.
Great, thank you. I have another question that just came in, kind of more future forward, but as you know, CGNA distributors have access to the best of the best in control solutions, right? Control OEMs look at this group to partner, develop relationships, so there's a lot of options. One of the things that we haven't seen within our industry is a lot of technology advancements, right? Some of that was just slowed down with COVID, supply chain, all of the above. But in regards to TCS, if you could maybe share a little bit about your product and services and what changes you're focused on and how your portfolio may evolve over the next couple years.
Sure. I'm going to start this because I want Mark to answer this question. But one of the biggest reasons why we brought Mark here is his experience in the field and also his experience working with ASHRAE. So you really have been involved at where the industry is going, and that's really been helping our development. So maybe you want to speak to that.
So essentially what ASHRAE brings is the best of the best, you know, the smartest people that are out there, because they're driving to the point of what's next, what needs to be done. And there's so much discussion. Net zero has been a regular discussion. And now we know what concerns about carbon offsets and that carbon reduction, so the decarbonization component of it. And so how do you get that? How do you minimize the amount of energy? How do you minimize the amount of carbon creating components of that? And so what the issue is, there isn't enough people to make it available. And so we've had customers that said, I'd love to use your product, I just don't have people in order to make that happen. And so the component is to how can you get more controls into the hands of these buildings that really need to it. And so ASHRAE is focusing on how do we streamline that approach, and that's what TCS is doing. What do we need to do to make the building controls more sophisticated, more smart, and be able to do that forward? And that's what TCS is really focusing on, how to do that, but keep it in a straightforward approach so that it's a radio button and fill in a value, radio button, fill in a value, so that when our tech support is called and it's like, so how do you set that up? And tell me, go through and show me all that setups. They can go through that and say, no, you shouldn't activate that. That's not the right thing. Change that setting. Let's go check and see if it works, and we can help them out on that basis. So it's not like saying, I don't know what's going on, we got to call that technician. Well, the technician that did it, he's on another job, I can't get somebody over there. It's like, no, we can do that by just stepping through it. I really didn't talk too much about our hardware and great configuration, but as a configurable controller, all of our inputs and outputs are defined for a particular function. That has a tendency of making a lot more inputs and outputs on our controls. So some cases it looks as like, wow, you got way too many, but we know what those functions are. So when you have a G terminal, you know it's for fan function, and our tech support can look at it and say, that's where you wire in the fan. How did you wire it? If we're going to heating and cooling, we know that it's a Y for cooling and a W for heating. If we're going to end up having a power coming into it, we know what all those terminals, and that makes it easier to initially install it, easier to support it, and easier to make sense as it's going forward. So, so we're different in that approach. We're not. The chances are we're not going to be as small as others because we end up having a lot more terminals. But on top of it, those are all built in. All that logic's built in. All a user needs to do is add that sensor, add a relay into it.
Right.
And you can add that.
You know, that mantra we have, that energy management simplified, that's our litmus test for everything that we do. If we can't make it simple for people to use, we need to go back to the drawing board. And it's hard to make something simple. It's really much easier to make it complicated and have to put the burden on the user to be able to do it. But that's not what we believe. I think there's another thing as far as development is concerned that we've seen too, is especially during COVID, indoor air quality became a much bigger issue, which is one of the reasons why we added to our Ubiquistat line. We added humidity sensors in them to bring that point in and be able to do direct humidity control right from that Ubiquistat. Wi-Fi is another thing. Wireless, any kind of wireless control or wireless capabilities, it seems to be an issue that they want to pull less and less wire wherever possible. And we actually came out with a Wi-Fi version of the Ubiquistat so it can communicate BACnet IP over Wi-Fi back to our QD device. Continuing to look at IAQ, I think, is something we're going to be looking at more and more in the future, and developing more communication protocols as well. Right now, like I said, we've got our legacy control, we've got BACnet MSTP, we've got BACnet Wi-Fi over IP, and we got BACnet direct IP with our newest controller, our 5182, which is our new air handler controller. So that's going to be developed into more and more controllers as well.
Great. All right, well, we'll close. We've got 2 questions, and I'm just going to, I think they're, again, distributors thinking about customer type. So the question, I'll just read both of them. Is the perfect customer a small, medium enterprise end user? So that's question 1. And secondly, would you categorize Ubiquity as a lower cost alternative to traditional big building BMS? Is that how we need to be thinking of that solution?
I would say yes. That to the second question, I think that's true. Would you agree with that, Mark?
Correct. I consider it more of a streamline. The negative, and when you say a lower cost, you say, well, then it's a less features, right? And it's not. And the greatest challenge, even as we were planning webinars earlier this morning, where we're talking about that, is do people really understand all of what they have? And they don't. So even our own staff was saying, well, I didn't know that was available. And so it's not a de-featured, but it is a lower cost of entry and a lower long-term cost. The life cycle cost is substantially lower.
And I think the installation and commissioning costs are a lot less with Ubiquity, because you could see how simple it is to not just install, but also to get the system up and running is literally within hours. You can have the system up and running in Ubiquity and commission the equipment and get your scheduling and programming done. And it doesn't take an awful lot of training to do that.
To complement that as well, you were asking about what kind of customer base. There isn't a particular one. We struggled with that aspect because some have wanted to put us in that box. Are you just under so many square footage, or are you not medical or something in regards to that? And that's not really the case, because you could end up having just packaged units, and that package units could be lots of entire community college of multiple locations, and that would just be ideal. So when you can put anywhere from 300 controllers, which include all the points, 17 hardware points, 250 software points, into every one of the individual controllers, that can cover a large square footage. So don't put it in that box.
I think it's more application than anything else. It's the, the packaged equipment, of course, is something we do all day, every day. But it's not just that. Like I said, with our banking customer, he wants something where he could handle his VAV jobs, his zoning jobs, his boilers, his chillers, those types of things as well.
Great. Okay, good. Well, it looks like we are at the top of the hour, so I don't see any additional questions. And let me check my phone. No additional questions on my end. So, Brian Tarbert.
We'd like to thank you for making this and making this aware.
Yes,
available.
very much so.
But on top of it, we're so grateful that you welcomed TCS into the family of CGNA. We want to continue that support. As likely, we've reached out to many of your members We look forward to continuing on with that. Some cases, like with today's world, you get voicemails, you don't get always responded by emails. We're going to continue to try and just help you to see where it can grow in your business. If it doesn't work out, that's fine. We understand that as well. But we just want to do our best in order to help your business in the marketplace. And so, Sarah, thank you. And Laura, thank you for all the technology work.
No, thank you, Brian Tarbert, VP of Business Development, and Mark Miller, Business Development Engineer. And TCS will actually be exhibiting and participating at the September conference in Indianapolis. So if you have not registered, we encourage you to do so and come out and meet the TCS Basis team in person. So thank you, gentlemen. Excellent webinar. And we will make sure that we have this posted on our on-demand section of our site. And we appreciate both of you in TCS Basis.
Thank you all very, very much.
All right,
Appreciate
take
it.
care. Bye-bye.
All right, thank you.